Yeah. So we can just try it then. Where if you want to do it similar to how you'd normally do it, and if you say something, I'll ask you questions, and we can go off track a bit. What do you think?
All right. Cool. All right. So from the top. All right. So this is the verbal / conversational meeting minutes from the West Yorkshire Autism ADHD Co-Production Group meeting that was held on Tuesday, the 1st of November. The people that came along on this occasion were myself, Rhiannon, Jodie, Owen, Angie, Erin, Amelia, Beth, Nikki, Gemma, and minutes were taken by project support Jackie.
So could I ask a question about Jackie? When did Jackie start and what's her role?
So Jackie started on middle of October, so today marks a month of her being here, and she's working full time, and 50% of that is for co-production and 50% of that is as support to Shelley in her role as lead. So she's employed by Touchstone entirely, but kind of Touchstone are subcontracting her, if you like, a little bit to NHS to support Shelley.
And her role is administration, is it?
Yeah. She's been doing more than that. And Nikki and Gemma have come from Forum Central, and Nikki, you know what, I'm not entirely sure what Gemma's job title is, but they work in digital inclusion for mental health and learning disability and autism in Leeds. So it's not West Yorkshire wide, but I guess some of the stuff that they can talk about will be relevant to cross areas.
So were these invited guests to the co-production meeting, Nikki and Gemma?
Yeah.
And what did they talk about? Or were they just observing?
Just observing, really. I mean, Nikki works a bit in co-production, so it might be good for us to kind of link up later down the line and, share contacts and stuff for people who might want to get involved on some of each other's projects. And I think there's a point where our projects could meet as well, because I think Forum Central are doing a bit of work with AIM on looking at getting a mental health like navigator person.
Similar to that role that there is in Calderdale, so a neurodevelopmental pathway, right to choose navigator.
Yeah. So that kind of mental health for people with autism ADHD. So yeah, that might kind of meet with that project at some point, but it was just an introduction one really, which is quite a few fun.
Brilliant.
Update? Want me to update?
Yep.
Okay. So I Rhiannon updated people about the working together days that we've had. Just to kind of refresh on that. That was 3 separate days, each on the topic of assessment pathways across West Yorkshire for people seeking an assessment for autism and or ADHD.
So to clarify, was that there was a children and young people pathway and diagnosis working together day, wasn't there? And a adults pathway, and then a right to choose working together day. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
And across those days, we had a mix of people with lived experience and professionals from NHS and third sector, BCSE. That's what called third sector. And that's people and parent carers as well, lived experience, as well as people who are neurodivergent themselves, and some people who are a cocktail of all those things. We had 170 people attend over the 3 days. There was less attendance. There was a good attendance for all of them actually, but the one with fewest was the working.
The right to choose working together.
Yeah. And we think that's a product of people not understanding or knowing about right to choose, which is obviously one of the issues in itself. And so that said, we get quite good turnout for something that's not particularly well known about, or is not known about as it should be. Feedback from these days were that there should be a centralised hub online and in each place, and that would be helpful. This would be for professionals and drop-in and available to people with lived experience, so kind of an epicentre, if you like, in each district for all things autism, whether that's kind of clinical or social or employment, everything. And an agreement that people should get needs-related support. So a lot of the feedback we got back was about things being person-centred and looking at people not in a deficit-based way, and looking at people for their strengths and them before their diagnosis or non-diagnosis or any of that.
So the social model perspective where it's more barriers, the way that society is organised, so it's in its environments and its attitudes that tend to stop neurodivergent people from having a good life.
People being disabled by society, not disabled because of them.
Yeah.
Rhiannon said that she had slides from the meeting, and she could go with people one-to-one if they wanted. So far, I've not had anybody asking to be trained in slides, but the offer still stands if anyone wants it.
I'd be interested.
Of course you would, you love it. Benchmarking for reimbursement. Open that here. Oh, there we go. It's embedded. Jackie is good. Jackie's embedded that. I can send this document to people who want to see it as well. But the crux of it is that there's kind of a set payment of £10 for co-production meetings and planning attendance. And then there's 2 levels on top of that. Level 1 being a set payment of £20, which is 90 minutes or less of someone's personal time. And that covers things like consultation, case study or story sharing, article submission, and support with social media and comms. And then the level 2 involvement would be on an hourly rate of £10 an hour, regardless of age, to be reviewed if national living wage is raised high enough to exceed it. And that includes facilitation, project ambassador, information collation and delivery, research and reports / visuals, and working together days. So that's, I guess, what people have agreed is sort of more intensive work, or is a bit more kind of outcome focused, kind of maybe warrants more.
So you included that document in your email of the 26th of October with the agenda, so if anybody wants to go back to that, they might be able to find it there.
Oh, good. Yeah, and anybody paying for travel expenses, including mileage, parking, public transport, excluding taxes, unless taxes requires a reasonable adjustment, or will be reimbursed. We don't want anybody in any kind of debt for supporting this project. And just to clarify, anybody that's already being paid in any part to kind of take part in the project by another organisation wouldn't be eligible for this. It's the people that aren't getting paid or doing it on a voluntary basis, etc.
And did you mention in the meeting that the payments will apply from 1st of November?
No, I don't think I did. But I think going from 1st of November, just because that's when we've got documented records of people attending and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, from there on in, people are happy with that.
Yeah.
Lots of co-production meetings and then back pay for stuff that they've already been told they'd get paid for as well. So working together days.
Yeah.
Same as that. So Camilla was asking what the definitions of tasks were. So the reason I kind of like the kind of slightly vague, which I know is annoying for some people, but also by keeping it slightly vague means that we can like have those frank discussions with people depending on what their particular needs are. Because what actually in reality, what looks like easy work for one person isn't for the next. So actually we can kind of keep it a little bit open. We can actually have those conversations with people and work out what they feel is reasonable and fair.
Yeah.
Without having to keep it too tight, if that means.
And the reason you've gone to all this trouble to figure out this is because, excuse me, people are often on benefits and payments will affect their benefits, but then the self-employed people and other things. So you've been really good in trying to figure out what works best for individuals as much as you can.
Yeah, I hope so. And, we've got a few links now as well to like websites that give you it as easy as it can be, to like what you're eligible for and not eligible for, and what might affect what depending on your circumstances, which is a bit of a minefield. But again, like as co-production coordinator, it's kind of my job to help people go like navigate that if they need it.
Yeah.
So people can come to me and then I'll come to you and say,
Come to the Oracle.
Exactly.
So move on.
Oh yeah, and then everyone agreed with that. They were all happy with that kind of setup, and it's something I take it to finance. To update it, I have been to finance this last week. They've given it the all clear. We've worked out how to do it, and Jackie's involved in that as well. So hopefully in the next few weeks we're getting stuff out to people, which is quicker than we thought it'd be, which is nice. That never happens, does it?
Yeah, you think things don't always move as quickly as one wants, so, but there you go.
Exactly, especially when it's financial, so yeah. Very nice. We looked at the ambassador roles as well. So the idea behind the ambassadors is that we'd have a children and young people ambassador and an adult ambassador. And it was kind of agreed that this would be a good idea to do through organisations, because of if we were to do it as an employed post through co-production, it costs us loads more and would eat into kind of like the finance and also the time that we've got the limited staffing for this project. So we thought it might be kind of like more cost and time efficient, and better for whoever ended up in those posts as well, if they were supported by another organisation who could kind of look after the overheads as well as their well-being, supervision, development, and kind of support in the workplace. I just don't think we'd be able to ethically offer if we were to kind of like do that through.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a better understanding of what happened now. My internet, so I was having problems with my internet on the day, and just as you were saying all that in the meeting, I'd lost connection, so...
that must be quite exciting.
I know. Because when I came back, you asked if there was any, what I'd missed, and I think I was gone about 5 minutes, because there was another instance actually where my computer not only did I lose internet, I also had blue screen, which isn't good. So yeah, there's bits and pieces that I missed at the meeting, so it's good to catch up.
Well, yeah, for clarity on that as well. So those would be 2 ambassador roles until the end of the project, and that's somebody working every week. And if that ambassador couldn't do it or wanted to step down, that organisation could then sort of find somebody appropriate to replace them reasonably quickly. But that doesn't mean as well that we can't have ad hoc ambassadors for other parts of the project as well. I know that other people have shown an interest in doing that, but they don't want to kind of have to commit to doing it every week at a certain time, or how it might, again, financial effects on benefits and income and things like that. We don't want to stress with that. So there still remains the option of people to do ad hoc bits of work, not just in an ambassador role, but various roles, and still kind of invoice us for that according to the benchmarking policy, if you like. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is so the ambassador role, is the intention for that those people to attend the steering group meeting, which commissioners, service providers, local authority representatives attend, that basically give a go ahead for the how the deep dive progresses. So led by the co-production group, with the reference group, which generally has people from third sector organisations, commissioners, health service providers like GPs, housing, DWP, etc., to be kept informed. So it's fundamentally, the deep dive would be that the co-production dictates to a certain extent, because there is a pathway that's already decided, but if a particular element of what's decided, so for example the pathway that the co-production wanted the deep dive to look into, that that would influence the steering group to potentially make a decision or give permission for that to be looked into.
Yeah.
And that's what the ambassador roles are, is to, I guess, attend all of them so that they know. It's to join it up a bit more, isn't it? Because it doesn't feel particularly joined up right now.
And make sure there's that thread of lived experience through everything as well. And, be empowered and respected enough to call people out when, they're not being person-centred or they're losing track of actually kind of, having neurodiversity, divergence at the kind of core of everything that's going on.
Yeah, I guess it was a criticism of mine that the steering group didn't have anybody with lived experience on there, unless there's somebody in the steering group that holds one of those positions that's autistic and has ADHD, in which case there might be, but I guess even if that was the case, sometimes it's difficult to argue in those situations.
Yeah, I guess you wanted someone where their primary metaphorical hat is neurodivergence, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah.
And so, the organisations that have expressed an interest in that are All Star, who already have somebody working for them who's been working on the project already, which is Jodie, who's been like a brilliant unpaid ambassador so far. And they've recently agreed as well to let us have Amber, who's been doing that work too. But they'll be covering the financial side of things for Amber as well, so we can get to the price one, which is amazing.
Yeah. What do All Star do, and where are they based?
I think they're based in Bradford, and it's a young apprentice scheme with kind of specialism in neurodivergence as well.
Brilliant. I've not heard of that organisation, so that's good to know of another one. So.
Yeah. So the adult ambassador AIM expressed an interest as well.
So that's Leeds Autism AIM. That's obviously by the name based in Leeds.
Thank you.
You were
I don't know if they've got someone in mind, but they do similar work as well in existence. So
and Leeds Autism AIM primarily a self-advocacy group. So they offer advocacy, don't they, to individuals that live in Leeds that are autistic, but also they do things to help people to develop self-advocacy skills. So
that's the ambassadors. This whole section is called Coproduction, which is
it's kind of it's the ask of the group, really, isn't it, about what the co-production group might work on.
It's so good at putting things into words.
How are you?
Thank you. I guess the topic of the week of the month, as kind of like agreed in previous meetings, that we kind of have one central topic to kind of concentrate on, so we're not overwhelming everybody in the meetings. And this one's kind of about logos, branding, and strapline ideas for the deep dive, which I guess came from sort of like a need for us to kind of really boil down the essence of this project and what it means and why we're doing it. I'll read this down. Rhiannon said that the Working Together Days had raised some ideas, and the steering group had asked the Coproduction group to look at a logo or strapline ideas in the deep dive. They wanted peer-centred communication, and they were looking into care passports so that people did not need to repeat their story. Angie said she did not communicate by email. Owen said he agreed. And an NHS spine that we promised 10 years ago. What was that?
It's probably, I know they were looking at something so that it would be highlighted on all health records. So one of the issues is that a lot of NHS IT systems don't join up. So a hospital might not be able to see the record that you have at the GP. So if your GP record has been coded with no med code, say you're autistic or you have a learning disability or ADHD, your local trust might not be able to see that. So I think they were trying to figure out how that information could transfer between organisations, the health organisations from primary to secondary care, but I'm not sure that happened.
Almost 10 years ago. Rhiannon said they wanted to stop barriers to diagnosis. Angie said they need to speak plain English and not ask what pain is like on a scale of 1 to 10. That's something we get a lot as well. Rhiannon said guidance was needed to know what to do while waiting for a diagnosis. Owen said they needed a diagnosis to ask for reasonable adjustments. Angie said they did not need a diagnosis to ask for reasonable adjustment. It is under the Equality Act.
It is tricky. It's not as straightforward as I perhaps made it sound, but if an adult, for example, has had lots of instances, so for example, whenever anything happened to me at work and it looked like my job was at risk, I used to go and see my doctor so it'd be recorded somewhere. And basically for that reason was that if I needed to go to tribunal because I was dismissed, then there was actually there was a record that I was disabled. So it's not as straightforward as it ought to be, because yes, the Equality Act does not ask for a diagnosis, it just asks for evidence of a long-term substantial impairment that affects your ability to do everyday things, which it has to be longer than 12 months, and it has to affect your ability in so much as that it might take you twice as long to do something as it would an average person.
It's so clever to think of that.
Mark,
some people wouldn't, would they?
I'm recording.
But yeah, you shouldn't have to play that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of discussion about... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll check with him when she comes out of the meeting.
That's the arm movement I do when the cat's shat in the bath. Out. Get out. Angie said that she hated patient passports. Everyone should have one or no one. There's lots of questions, people don't know what to put. Owen said it'd be better if the reasonable adjustment list allowed you to pick from a list. Angie said that reasonable adjustment was not inclusive, just another barrier. Rhiannon said adjustments should be according to needs. Angie said we should not have to say why we need a reasonable adjustment.
Yeah. Patient passports, to a certain extent, make me think of the Star of David in the Second World War. A bit like lanyards, and then everything like lanyards aren't so bad, and I have worn one myself. From my point of view in the work that I've done is I can imagine a director of a trust having passports for people that are Islamic, for example, physically disabled, women, and you've got all these passports or all these needs that need to be met, including autism and other things, that I think it would just make you go, this is too much, I can't deal with this, and this is just how it is. Whereas I think if everybody was entitled to tell a hospital or whatever organisation the needs, what needs they need met in general, eventually it would force the hospital or other organisation to think differently about the services and how they provide them. But thinking, oh well, I have to do this for autistic people, I have to do this for disabled people, and I have to do this for Jewish people, and I have to do this for Islamic people, and I think, yeah, it's too overwhelming, and with other targets and pressures on directors of healthcare.
I guess so much of it though is about communication, isn't it? And I guess communication is fundamentally one of the biggest issues for a lot of people, particularly autistic people.
Yeah.
And I think because a lot of people, it would just be so much easier to kind of like put that down and be like, I don't want to have to explain it to you, I don't have to repeat myself.
Yeah.
There is. Then also, if they don't want to do that, that shouldn't be frowned on either. Like, I think it's good to have it as an option if that's something people want, but I guess it's because it becomes an expectation, like, well, why haven't you got your passport? Why haven't you got this?
Yeah.
You should have this because it makes my life easier.
Yeah, and also, for somebody with ADHD, I'm incredibly forgetful, so if I was to have one, I'd probably want it as an app on my phone, because my phone's the one thing that I don't tend to forget when I go out. I might forget my keys and my purse, but not my phone. So it's having to carry around a piece of paper isn't necessarily conducive to being helpful. And also, there's the case, experiences that I've had recently where I'm explaining to people that I'm autistic and I might need a reasonable adjustment around emails, for example, because I really struggle with written communication, is that even if you had a passport and when you're trying to explain it, I think I'm kind of coming around to this idea that we ought to just be able to say, I need a reasonable adjustment and state what it is without having to justify why.
Yeah.
Because my experience is I'm saying to people, I'm autistic and I have ADHD, I struggle with X, Y, and Z. And if I say I struggle with writing, I can write and I'm a good writer. But what they don't recognise is that it takes me a hell of a long time to do that. So an email might take me half a day to compose, not 10 minutes. So when I say I struggle to read and write, and then they recognise that it's probably not a functional disability. So then they decline my request and say, oh, well, that's against our policy and procedure. And I guess to a certain extent, half of that is an issue with staff not being trained on their obligations under the Equality Act, because there is a duty on individuals, not just on the organisation. So it's one of those things that we all like to discuss and discuss the pros and cons and merits for passports and what format they should come in. But again, that's about accessibility, isn't it?
I always talked about the ODM booklet about different organisations working together, which you could share. It was agreed to circulate the minutes next month. Owen said it was very good. Yeah, so using collective resources would help stop variation in services. And she said CCG needs to listen to us.
I can't remember what about though.
Everything.
Probably everything. Yeah. So yeah, I'd shared that booklet with you, and I said I was going to edit it in the meeting, but decided it would be best if people looked and maybe chose the bits that weren't necessary and the bits that they might like expanding, because the booklet was written for a different project, so the Operational Delivery Network.
Well, when I send out these, I want to do that with it as well. And then there's the Good Life model that we looked at as well. Angie did a bit of a presentation on that. Angie said that this had been produced with talking with third person. You, Angie, said it was scandal in 2018 as part of the transforming care work. Angie went through the model and explained that a good life model should mean that you do not reach crisis. Meaningful activity did not have to mean paid work, and enjoyable activities or voluntary work. Good healthcare in place that were needed. And you said the Good Life model was about dignity and respect. I think it was Beth that added in that, I don't know if it's written down. But she was saying about kind of some of the imagery sort of implied that meaningful work was paid work. And meaningful activity was paid work. Which kind of everyone agreed was like, that's not ideal. But
the meaningful activity includes everything that one might do. I guess to feel like they are contributing to society. So even the act of becoming educated is a contribution to society. So, but the images that were perhaps used in that, I think because it was for learning disabilities as well, they tend to be more simple. Whereas autistic people might prefer things a little bit more complex and in more detail.
Yeah.
But
the phrase meaningful activity is a bit nuanced, isn't it, really? It's so individual to what. Yeah.
So I did a presentation to the reference group as well about the Good Life model, explained it a little bit more in detail and the impact that not having access to the Good Life can have on individuals, using some of my own experience. And I shared, and I can't remember whether I shared in a co-production group meeting, the alternative, the sort of Good Life model that I thought that people needed. So it included things like advocacy and justice, digital access, and things like that. So, and I think the plan is to use the Good Life model potentially amended to reflect the people from the co-production group, will be used as I suppose benchmark, a central idea of what the ADHD and autism deep dive hopes to achieve is to make sure that those things are that people can access a good life by the end of the work, or at least sometime not too long after the end of the work.
Yeah. And I guess starting that while we're doing the work as well, getting that kind of born emotions, it's easy to ignore as well. It's already been started, isn't it?
Yeah.
You talked about Rhiannon said that I statements could be used. So they could discuss logos or ethos of individuals. What was coming out, sort of all the conversation was person-centred. It says care here, but basically, sort of person-centred provision of everything.
And what did you mean by I statements again? Was it along the lines of I need?
Yeah. So to achieve the good life model, I need to be listened to by my doctor. I need to be taken seriously at work. I need to be
It gives the good life model can help people to identify what those needs are, and then they can ask directly for those needs to be met. Yeah.
And then we looked at the sort of groups that are involved with the deep dive at the minute. Angie said there are 3 groups, and we need to make it clear that the co-production group should lead that. Rhiannon said the ambassadors would address that. Angie said she was confused by it all. Owen said he got blacked and audio visuals helped. Rhiannon asked if a short film would help. Nikki said she wasn't aware of one existing, wanted to make one. Nikki said she'd like to be involved. Rhiannon asked if people felt they could influence the work. If not, how they could change it. I guess to kind of reduce this down a bit, this was, lots of expand on it, and then whichever way you're looking at it. What we're talking about here is that we'll need to make sure that there's co-production and lived experience that are leading on decisions that are made in this project. And what I was kind of asking there, I guess, was that people felt that they understood what the different groups did. And your point, Angie, was that there wasn't enough representation of people with lived experience in the steering and reference group. I mean, less so the reference group, but definitely the steering group. All the way around. This is what I mean.
Yeah.
We really do it like a visual on explaining exactly what the group's purpose is.
Yeah. My understanding is that the steering group is wholly made up of commissioners, local authority representatives, and the service providers. So no, in that regard, it makes it look very not like co-production, because there's nobody else in that group other than the people that have the power to change things or retain the status quo. So yeah, I think the ambassador role will definitely help in that regard. And we did mention earlier about the different groups and how we at least see it should work, in so much as yes, there is a pathway sort of carved out about the work that the ADHD and autism deep dive needs to cover. However, it needs to be influenced. That work needs to be influenced and driven by the people that are in the co-production group that have lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say on this, the reason this part of the meeting was kind of why I shared the booklet that I'd done for the ODN, because lay people, so people that don't work in health services, wouldn't understand how broken up the NHS is. Most people don't know what a CCG is, and whilst they don't exist anymore, they're now ICBs, but again, who knows? So a CCG is a clinical commissioning group, and they replace PCTs, which are patient care trusts, and they basically buy all the healthcare services that the local communities need, and now they've all merged together in geographical areas. So
why do they do all this name change and stuff? They can't change any work they do.
I think usually because there is the minister for that particular department wants to create a legacy for themselves. I mean, there might be there could potentially be benefits for having to look at across the whole geography of West Yorkshire rather than just in places. Although whether funding for the services will change, because some local authorities and what was clinical commissioning groups get more funding than other places. So at least for our area, it tends to be richer than than Calderdale, Kirklees, Wakefield and Bradford. Whether that will change, how they're funded will change. If it is, I suspect we'll get even less money. But there you go. That's the cynic in me. But yeah, an integrated care board is basically developed from the Health and Social Care Act, which was designed for social services and healthcare to work closer together to give people a more joined up experience if they're leaving hospital and need care and support at home. That happens better, that the services are more joined up. And why they didn't do that in 1944, 1946, I don't know, but there you go. But yeah, it's to try and help the services are commissioned for the whole person, I guess, which is real person-centred care. Because often you get, oh well, that's not the NHS, that's social services, oh no, that's not us, that's healthcare. But yeah, sure, there may be benefits.
In conclusion.
Yes.
Right. Nikki said that she and Gemma worked on digital inclusion so that people could access the useful resources. Gemma said they worked with Mindwell, which is specific to Leeds, for signposting to help. Gemma said the idea was not to compete with other services, but to provide a shop window. They had an accessible layout and was flexible and willing to work with localities. Rhiannon said that Shelley had asked about the changing the name of the group from autism and ADHD. Angie said that she thought neurodevelopmental conditions or neurodiversity. That kind of came up from people saying sort of, because they were saying about being underrepresented on the ADHD side of things.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of it gets abbreviated just to autism, and the mental health, learning disability, and autism both left out.
Yeah.
ADHD.
I mean, it's very rare for a person with a neurodevelopmental condition, shall we say, not that like the medical model of it, but it's very rare that an individual just have one. It's usually at least two or three. So, yeah, I think it's tricky because I think in terms of the autistic or neurodivergent community in general, it's kind of here. Medical might be here slightly catching up, and then the population at large is miles behind, that you kind of feel like we have to go backwards, get them to come here and then drag them all forward so that they understand a little better about our lived experiences, and that not necessarily that being autistic or having ADHD isn't for some people seen as a negative. It just helps them to better understand why their lives seem to be more complicated than people that they might compare themselves to in society. So when they're in work or volunteering or at the job centre or in education, why other people seem to float through life, whereas everything seems to be quite difficult for people that are neurodivergent.
Then it went to any other business, if there wasn't any. Well, I said if anyone did have any, they didn't want to go and talk about there and then.
Yeah.
We could do some one-to-one discussions, but nobody has so far, but we have to still find if anyone's listening. Yeah.
Just on, if you just wanted, one of the things I was going to ask was there any outcomes? Was there any actions come from the logo? So the steering group asked the co-production to look at a logo, etc. On the ethos.
Wasn't there about looking, if anybody knew of any neurodivergent designers or artists get involved in that. There wasn't anyone, but I've been trying to hunt down someone appropriate, and I've spoken to Shelley about the importance that sort of whoever's involved in that design preferably has lived experience.
Just a suggestion that's come to me now, and it might be a really good way of you raising the profile of the work that's going on, because I think it's quite difficult. I think there's a lot of people that still don't know that this work's going on. Is that maybe you do a competition for somebody to design the logo?
That's an idea.
I know, especially for young people, children and young people, that kind of thing really gets them engaged and talking about things. And there is a lot of talent in our organisation, and instead of necessarily paying somebody to do that, you could have a competition prize award or something. Which,
that's amazing.
Yeah, like I said, it would also help you with the comms and getting more and more people involved or aware of the project.
Oh, yeah.
There is, I'm wondering, so at least in Leeds, there's a school, I think it's called the Lighthouse. But maybe getting in contact with schools. If things go through schools and things are sent home to parents, then that's a really good way of alerting people to the work that's going on.
Yeah.
And then maybe social media campaign that will also highlight, and with the organisations that are involved, if things go on Twitter or Facebook in particular, which I think is where most autistic people hang out, although there seems to be quite a lot on LinkedIn as well, getting those organisations to share posts about a competition might be, definitely, I think definitely to more people. Sorry, Marker.
It's alright, well, I wouldn't realise you were recording. I what you needed me to be quiet.
No, it's alright.